Cá estamos para mais um dia. Um dia de muito sol, com uma temperatura de 25 graus. Estamos a conduzir uma Mercedes nova, mais uma vez, exatamente a mesma de ontem. Estou na M25, contexto do relógio, a caminho de Feltham. Feltham é situado na parte oeste de Londres, não muito longe do aeroporto de Heathrow, o maior aeroporto do país. Lá, não muito longe, não dá a vir a pé, como é lógico. Mas é nesta zona também. Nós vamos sair na saída 12 em direção a Londres, na M3, e depois saímos logo na primeira saída, e depois há de ser estradas interiores, estradas de concelho. Durante 15 minutos por aí. Neste momento estou a mostrar que há um acidente aqui nestes placares luminosos. Estou a mostrar que há um acidente na saída 13, ou entre 13 e a 14. Estão a dizer que a fila de trânsito já chega à saída 12, é exatamente aquela para que a gente quer ir. Eu estou a passar neste momento pela saída 10, se bem que daqui até à 12 não é muito longe. Vamos lá ver se ainda apanhar algum trânsito ou não. Agora vou ter que encostar aqui para a faixa do lado direito. Esta é só para ir para a saída 10. Então são neste momento 5 horas da tarde. Eu peguei a um quarto para as 2. Estive lá uma hora sentado à espera de trabalho. Entretanto às 2 horas no escritório mudam os managers. E o que entrou às 2 horas não sabia que eu lá estava à espera, que eles não veem a gente onde a gente espera. E então só aí por volta das 20 para as 3 é que ele deu o que eu estava ali. E então logo a seguir uma saída. Então esta é a minha saída para hoje, Feltham. É só isto que eu vou fazer, não faço mais nada. É uma saída que, de acordo com os papéis que tenho, deve durar mais ou menos 6 horas. Claro que isto depende sempre do trânsito que se apanha, não é? Estou com um reboque de 10 metros, com traseiro, com eixo traseiro que vira. Acho que esta hora já devia estar a chegar à loja. Ainda nem vi que horas é que... Deixa-me cá olhar para o papel. Olha, tinha que chegar à loja às 2, às 5. Desculpa. Às 5. Já estou atrasado. Bem, meia hora. Não estou atrasado, mas... como devo lá mais ou menos meia hora a lá chegar, vou chegar atrasado meia hora. a mostrar nas placas informativas para reduzir a velocidade. Quer dizer que não me sabes. 60 milhas a hora para os carros. Congestão. Coxa. Quer dizer, cuidado. Aí trânsito à frente estacionário. Já reluz para 50, quer dizer que estamos prestes a chegar à confusão. Já dá para ver que está a começar a travar tudo, estamos a chegar ao problema. Pronto, eu vejo-nos do outro lado da bicha, quando isto passar tudo. Até já. Agora já passamos ali a confusão. Estamos já na M3 a caminho de Londres. Estamos já assim nesta próxima saída, que é a 308, A308. É a estrada de Bandeira que vai a seguir. Queria dizer mais uma coisa, vocês devem ver que está aí um vídeo pequenino com 1 minuto e tal, que eu pus hoje online no YouTube. Esse vídeo é essencialmente para que o YouTube use para fazer publicidade ao meu canal. Foi feito especificamente para isso. Portanto, se o virem, o efeito desse vídeo é só mesmo para publicidade. Vê se o nosso canal cresce. Preciso tomar aqui, desligar o cruise control.
Got really annoyed with the Better Together campaign. I changed my mind. As you know, basically, because I didn't like Alex Hammond. But once I started doing research into it, I don't see the problem. On the nose, you can smell the whiskey. It should be quite sweet. Yeah, you know that. Okay, some candied fruits, and then go for it, just taste it. My name's Robert Michael. I'm from just outside Glasgow, a place called Renfrew, and in the upcoming Renfrew Club will be
Na rádio estou a falar sobre o habitual, Escócia, o referendo. Agora não se fala outra coisa, até quinta-feira, até à decisão final, não se fala de outra coisa. E depois da decisão tomada, durante muito tempo não se vai falar de outra coisa. Isto é hora de ponta neste momento, há muito trânsito, muita confusão.
Seeing you on Thursday when we're broadcasting the programme from Glasgow. At 5:27, let's go to your calls. Pat is on the M25. Hello, Pat.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
I'm very well. What would you like to tell me?
Basically, I think it's up to the top to decide their own destiny. So what concerns me is that we are already in the middle of austerity measures where services are being cut here, there and everywhere. And from the little detail that we have received on this new offer to Scott, it just sounds like they've been given an open checkbook to remain within the Union, and that worries me a lot, that there's going to be such a divide between England and, England, Wales and the rest of, the Scottish.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's an open checkbook, but it's certainly open a little bit, because if you continue the Barnett formula, which is it was decided by the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Joel Barnett, back in the late 1970s, and basically for every pound that's spent in England, a certain percentage has to be spent in Scotland, whether it's needed or not. So if you build a motorway in England, you'd have to build something similar in Scotland. Now, to my mind, I think it's outrageous that the three party leaders have guaranteed that that formula will continue when it is completely out of date, it is completely advantageous to Scotland and disadvantageous to the English taxpayer.
Really, that's something we need to do. People should have a decision in making, just not please,
Vamos agora aqui à direita.
There will be, whatever the vote is in Scotland on Friday, there is going to be some sort of reaction.
Estamos a apanhar muito trânsito.
I hope it's a positive reaction in some senses, in that but I do think that people in England aren't going to be satisfied with the present constitutional settlement, especially if it's a no vote and all these extra powers go to Scotland, because Alex Salmond basically will have won, and the English in the constitutional settlement will be at an even further disadvantage. That can't continue. 0345 6060 973. Roger says, it's time England stopped pandering to Scotland and we stopped bloated Scottish constituency MPs having a say on non-Scottish issues. Well, I agree with the sentiment there, maybe not the extent of the language. 0345 6060 973. I'm Ian Dale at Drive, LBC News Time, it's 5:30. Simon Conway has the headlines.
EDF Energy says key questions remain unanswered about the future of the energy industry.
Daqui por mês para esta hora já está
The
direito.
chief executive officer has written to its 15,000 UK staff, warning of the risks of leaving the union. The top US military leader has told Congress America should
Let's
consider
go, man.
ground
Move.
forces to Iraq if the air campaign to destroy Islamic extremists fails. President Obama has previously said American
What's wrong with his
The
guy?
helicopter has crashed into the sea at the foot of cliffs in East Yorkshire. It came down off the coast of Flamborough earlier this afternoon. There are no details of any injuries. The families of two British tourists found murdered on a Thai island from Patriotism. 24-year-old Declan Miller and Hannah Whitbridge, who was 23, were found dead on the beach yesterday. Police have questioned 3 migrant workers in connection with their deaths. LBC weather, dry and sunny into this evening for London and the southeast. Dry overnight and lows of 14 degrees. This will probably many central and eastern parts of the UK tonight. Some light rain too. Dry with clear spells in the west. Tomorrow mainly dry with some warm sunny spells. Showers possible later in the day. From the local newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway. I'm Chris Gold in the LBC Travel Centre. The M25 is heading clockwise from junction 12 to the M3. Junction 13 is stays after a lane was closed with an accident. Also clockwise on the M25, very heavy between junction 24 to Crossfire and 25 Enfield. Anti-clockwise slow from junction 13 to station 12 for the Thorpe interchange. And there are queues on both approaches to the Dartford River crossing. It's especially slow anti-clockwise with queues from junction 2 to the A2. The M23 has a lane closed on the southbound Hitchin Slip Road at the M25 junction with the van broken down. And the A102 in Greenwich is queuing northbound between Blackwall Lane and Blackwall Tunnel. That's after a lane was closed with a van that's broken down. Parslow Hill Broadway still closed in both directions between Fortis Green Road and Colney Hatch Lane because of a burst water main. It's causing a queue there. And an all circular in Finchley Street westbound from the M1 to Headley's Corner after a town long lane with an accident. And Borough High Street queuing southbound and Borough Centre lanes closed with the car was broken down. On the trains, Southern and Thameslink had delays of up to half an hour out of town via Hayward's after a signalling problem. Keeping London moving, your next travel updates in 15 minutes. LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting, fast, easy online meetings. Go online for a free 30-day trial. James O'Brien, weekday mornings from 10 on LBC.
Mum would say, Teacher, I want you to do it hard. Teacher, please don't be slow. And I was made to make sure George Lumsford was sitting out, but she would make sure that I carried out the punching if it wasn't hard enough, then I would get a beating.
James O'Brien on LBC with Nectar Business. The loyalty program small businesses need to know about. So many different appliances in your home. It can be hard to keep track of how much you're spending on your energy. That's why at British Gas we're upgrading our customers to smart meters. They help you see what you're spending on things like appliances, heating and lighting, giving you more control of your energy use, which could save you money. Find out more at britishgas.co.uk/smart. Currently rolling out. Conditions and exclusions apply. Fuel for your customers only.
Vitobiotics helped pioneer the concept of different vitamins for men and women, creating Well-Man for me.
And Well Woman for me, with iron for energy release and vitamin C for my immune system.
Well-Man and Well-Woman from Vitobiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company.
Available from Boots, pharmacies and vitobiotics.com.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC with the RAC, serving motorists for 117 years.
5:34, you're listening to Ian Dale at Drive. Time for a business update with Ben Kumar at 7 Investment Management. Ben, good evening.
Good evening, Ian.
Now, the UK inflation rate has fallen to 1.5%. Is that unalloyed good news?
Well, I mean, it depends. I think part of the reason it's fallen has been the decline in food and drink prices, maybe from the supermarket price wars we've seen. So, in one sense, the actual man in the street will really feel the benefit of this. I think we've seen it in our weekly shops. In other ways, you don't want it to go too low because then prices start dropping for good, and the economy gets in a bit of trouble. But 1.5%, it seems pretty reasonable.
Now, ASOS, the online fashion store, what are they announcing?
Well, they've seen their shares fall 10% today. Basically, they've said that they think the next 12 months for them are going to be pretty difficult. Over the last year, they saw a 33% increase in UK sales. It's pretty hard to replicate that kind of growth. ASOS being an online clothing sales store, it's also facing some competitors from the likes of Boohoo.com and others, so it's basically facing a more challenging environment and says it's going to need to readjust to cope with that.
So Boohoo for ASOS. Now the markets, how do the markets look today?
The FTSE was a little bit lower at 6792. The pound was a bit stronger today, up to 163 against the dollar. Fairly flat against the euro though, still at 125.5.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. That's Ben Kumar at 7 Investment Management.
LBC Business.
with Nectar Business. Collect points and turn them into something special.
Coming up to 5:36 here on LBC. Now let's talk to Alan Smith, who is an SNP MEP and the party spokesman on Europe. And Alan joins us now. Alan, hi.
Ian, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Now, I was watching the television the other night and I saw the Spanish Foreign Minister, or their spokesman on Europe, basically saying that Scotland hasn't got a hope in hell of joining the EU as an independent country. And how can you convince me otherwise?
Well, I can convince you otherwise by referring to what he's actually said, and bear in mind he's an ex-MEP colleague of mine. What we have in Scotland is unique in European constitutional theory. We've got an agreed democratic negotiation between the UK government and the Scottish government under the Edinburgh Agreement. Scotland, remember, has been independent for longer in our history than we've been part of Great Britain, so there is nobody denies that Scotland has a right to make this choice, either yes or no. So what we have is an agreed outcome which will be negotiated across the UK government and Scottish government, and then of course there's implications in EU relations for the UK as well. So this is a negotiated outcome which truly does make us unique. Treaty law within the EU is silent on the point. It's unprecedented, and it's deliberately silent. My predecessor, Neil McCormick, Professor Neil McCormick, when he was an MEP, he put forward to what eventually became the Lisbon Treaty process. But the EU should have a roadmap for this sort of stuff, and the member states didn't want to see one written down because it puts the member states to view all of this stuff on the politics, on its merits, on a case-by-case basis.
So essentially you're saying that Scotland would not be considered effectively a new applicant because it's already a member under the UK, but that sort, and I can understand the logic of that, but that hasn't been ratified by Brussels, has it?
Well, no, Scotland's not a member. The UK is the member, but equally we are part of the EU territory. Our students are off on Erasmus. We've got 140,000 EU nationals living, working, studying in Scotland, all of whom have a vote, incidentally. What we're doing actually is a celebration of democracy for EU principles in action. So our situation is unprecedented, absolutely. But the treaties are silent.
O segurança viu que eu estava a chegar, abriu logo o portão. É que é. Well done. Não tive que sair da caminhonete para ir tocar a campainha. Aí estamos a chegar à loja. Já estamos 36 minutos atrasados. Mas aqui não é problemático. Porque eles também estão sempre atrasados, por isso está-se bem.
Colleagues, all the Scottish members of the Committee of the Regions, Scottish members of the Economic and Social Committee. Much of what needs to be done is about housekeeping. It truly is. I don't want to
it's more than that.
dismissive of that, but it is.
It is more than that, because of course any new member of the EU, and however we look at it, Scotland would be a new independent member of the EU, would have to adopt the euro because they won't accept anybody. And again, the Spanish Foreign Minister was very clear on this, and I've heard other EU politicians say that Scotland would have to adopt the euro.
Well, that's just absurd. How would we possibly...
Well, it may be absurd, but that's what they're saying.
Yeah, well, it is, but what we're seeing is a bit of posturing by and large right-wing men across various places of Europe trying to say that it's going to be difficult. We have an agreed constitution.
Pronto, espero que tenham gostado.
Specifically, seeing as you raised it.
Mais um dia, mais uma viagem. E amanhã mais. Tá bom? Um abraço e amanhã. Tchau, tchau.